These are live pictures that we're beaming to you ahead of that media briefing, which will begin at any moment now from Pretoria. You might remember in June this year, South Africa, especially parts of the Eastern Cape, were hit by torrential rains, strong winds and flooding. In fact, it resulted in over 100 fatalities, thousands of people being displaced. I mean, riverbanks were burst, homes were completely flooded, vehicles being swept away. And at that time, a national disaster was actually declared. These weather systems also in some parts of the country brought about snow, especially at the height of winter. And that took place in some inland areas as multiple cold fronts actually swept through South Africa today. This year, I beg your pardon. And in fact, we were told that we should anticipate rainier than usual summer season, which is certainly what we're starting to witness, at least at this early onset. It seems the media briefing itself has just about started. I'm going to check with the team if we're able to make out what is being said as we anticipate, of course, details about what lies ahead in the weeks to come. Let's listen in.
Who's a senior forecaster, and then next to me is Mr. Tobela, who's also a forecaster. So I'm going to hand over to the team, but before I do so, we'll afford them the opportunity to address us, followed by a question and answer session afterwards. So over to the first speaker from the South African Weather Service.
To the chairperson of the National Press Club, your executives, the members of the Press Club, all other media practitioners, the colleagues of the South African Weather Service, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us here today. So we bring you warm greetings from the South African Weather Service, and the South African Weather Service, in partnership with the National Press Club, has called this briefing at a time of heightened public interest on the weather conditions expected in this period from December 2025 right through to April 2026, because this includes the festive season, Christmas Day, New Year's Day. And it's a time where a lot of South Africans will be traveling and they will be gathering with loved ones and engaging in outdoor activities. So it is therefore very critical that communities and decision makers in all sectors of society are adequately informed about the potential risk that weather could hold. So this briefing follows the successful conclusion of the early warning roadmap for all. And we would just like to give you an overview of what it is that we will be expecting. However, we would like to give you also to touch on certain conditions that has taken place and that really would emphasize why it is important that members of the public should be following the weather alerts that will be issued as and when needed. So this briefing takes place against a somber backdrop of several severe weather events experienced from the late to late spring into the onset of summer, and it includes the heavy rainfall that was recently experienced in KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, resulting in widespread flooding in certain municipalities, and that has also tragically led to the loss of life and extensive damages to infrastructure. In other events, severe thunderstorms affected Gauteng, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, and it brought large hail, intensive downpours, strong winds, with the northern parts of Gauteng and adjacent areas of Limpopo amongst the hardest hit. And these incidents, rounded off this year, it's marked by profound loss, included the devastating rainfall and flooding in parts of the Eastern Cape, where more than 100 people lost their lives, including residents of rural communities and areas in Mthatha. So once again, the South African Weather Service extends its deepest sympathy to the families and the communities who lost loved ones during these tragic events. We honor their memory by strengthening our collective resolve to reduce future loss of life and damage to properties through effective early warnings and preparedness and response. So we're going to give a brief overview on the seasonal climate outlook. As we look ahead to the coming months, the South African Weather Service, through its disaster risk reduction function, has released its latest seasonal and climate outlook for 2025-2026 summer season, covering the periods from December 2025 to April 2026. The forecasts indicate a transition towards a weak La Niña state, which is expected to influence rainfall, temperature patterns across the country. La Niña refers to the pattern where the waters in the central and eastern Pacific Ocean become cooler than normal. This cooling changes the global wind and weather patterns. It typically brings above normal summer rainfall to the northeastern parts of South Africa, such as Gauteng, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and KwaZulu-Natal, also parts of the Northwest Province, as well as the Free State. Climate model predictions suggest an increased likelihood of above normal rainfall over these central and eastern parts of the country. These wetter than usual conditions are consistent with the typical impacts associated with La Niña episodes and expected to persist to mid to late summer. From the disaster risk reduction perspective, the anticipated rainfall may bring positive impacts for water resources and agriculture, but it also raises the risk of localized flooding, particularly in flood-prone areas, informal settlements, and regions with poor draining infrastructure. Communities are therefore urged to remain vigilant, especially during periods of persistent and intense rainfall. Looking ahead to the festive season, including Christmas and New Year, the South African Weather Service expects partly cloudy, warm to cool conditions across most parts of the country. Isolated to scattered thunder showers are anticipated mainly over the central and the eastern parts of South Africa. Thunderstorm activities is expected to occur primarily in the afternoon, although periods of increased moisture may result in morning showers in certain areas. Much of the rainfall during this period will be associated with afternoon and evening thunderstorms, which may at times be accompanied by heavy downpours, lightning, and gusty winds. So the public is strongly urged to take serious the warnings issued, as they play a critical role in the reduction in injury, loss of life, or property damage.
And that rounds off the media briefing from the South African Weather Service, essentially just giving us an idea of what to expect in the weeks ahead over the festive season, all the way till April next year. And the long and short of it is that the rainy and wet conditions that we've experienced over the past couple of days ain't going nowhere anytime soon. In fact, we're told to expect a cool to warm Christmas Day with afternoon showers, which has really been the case over the past couple of years. And this is because of what's called a weak La Niña state, which speaks to higher than normal rainfall during the summer season, at least for the central and eastern parts of the country. So you're talking Gauteng, parts of Limpopo, parts of the Free State, the majority of KwaZulu-Natal, and the Eastern Cape as well. So this has been a prediction, by the way, that was communicated in September already, and we're told that that prediction was very close to what we're seeing unfolding in real time. In fact, we're told that we've experienced the wettest spring in a couple of years. I think they said 25 years, that's a quarter of a century, which is quite significant, of course. Nothing untoward, by the way, it's just how the cookie crumbles at this time of the year. It all has to do with atmospheric pressure and the temperature in the ocean, for lack of a better term, which ultimately has an impact on where we are in the southern tip of Africa. So a wet Christmas Day. Don't say we didn't warn you, and make sure, of course, that you make the necessary arrangements. But on a much more serious note, a real sobering, I suppose, alert from officials from the South African Weather Service who've mentioned that these are sometimes matters of life and death, and we've seen that unfold, I beg your pardon, even this year, where flooding in parts of the Eastern Cape has claimed several lives. Most recently, we told you about a story of 2 people who were swept away by those heavy rains. One body was found, with the other, I think, still unaccounted for. So very serious indeed that you look out before heading out to get a sense of how those weather conditions will be unfolding.